In 2003, Molly Knightley was driving home from college for the weekend when she thought she might have hit someone. While investigating, she couldn't find any signs of an accident. Instead, a woman appeared and hitchhiked for a lift. Not wanting to leave a young, vulnerable woman alone on a country road, Molly led her into the back seat of her car. As the journey continued, the woman remained deadly silent, and as Molly noticed how similar in appearance she looked to her, sinister events began to unfold. This is Molly Knightley's account, which she gave to Sergeant Clarke Bayliss from the Maryland State Police Department, stating what happened to her. That evening, she let a stranger into the back of her car. I grew up in a small town in Maryland, the kind where everyone knew everyone. I liked the warmth of regular people knowing my name. It felt different in Philadelphia. That's where I'd been studying for the last 2 years. No one, other than a handful of people there, knew my name. I was a blur in the crowd. I believed that the opportunities flourished in the city, but the bonds, they're formed in the small town that I called home. After all, it was my quaint little town where I'd met my boyfriend, Max. We got together in senior year and we'd been together ever since. The distance seemed to be working out just fine for us. We met each other every 2 weekends and we took turns. I'd drive to him, and then he'd drive to me. Not seeing him every day seemed to only make us stronger. On this occasion, it was my turn to drive and see him. My lecture ran over, and then my roommate had boyfriend drama, so I left a couple hours later than I wanted to. I called Max, and I left a voicemail message telling him that I was on my way. The drive was fine at first. It was unremarkable, but it was fine. I felt better as soon as I veered off the highway, the sooner than I needed to. I was singing along to Outcast and marveling at the layers of green, only fully appreciating how much I missed the countryside when it finally surrounded me. I was about 40 minutes from home and on a deserted road when my phone rang from the seat next to me. I scrambled to answer it, knowing it would be Max. As I flipped it open with a "Hey Em," I looked up. I saw this woman standing in the middle of the damn road. I never braked so hard in my life. I slammed forward, my seatbelt was saving me, and my college textbooks and my folders and my duffel bag, anything else that had been in the back seat was rattling all around me. God, I swore loudly. Max's contorted voice was sounding around me. The radio had stopped. I didn't know where my phone was. It'd fallen right off the seat, so I shouted, "Em, I have to check something out." I couldn't see the woman through my windshield. I couldn't see anyone. I slowly unbuckled my seatbelt and I'm twitching as I noticed how much my ribs ached. And then I opened the door and I stepped out into this graying light. And I thought that was it. I was going to see some mashed up body right under my bumper or a mangled limb caught into my wheel. God, I gagged at the thought in readiness for it. But there was no one there. There was no blood. There was no sign of an accident. There was nothing. My heart was just racing as I tried to make sense of it. And I walked to the grassy road edge to see if the woman had been flung in there. I'd seen her. I know I'd seen her. People didn't just disappear. I got on my hands and knees and I patted the grass. I must have looked crazy. But I thought I might have hit someone, so I had to make sure I had not. I sensed this change near me, so I looked up. And I saw a young woman standing at the side of the road where I swore I'd just been. She had this long, tangled black hair and the ends were tinted blue. The oversized pink sweater that she wore seemed to swallow up most of her cream dress, and her arm was outstretched and her thumb up to hitch a lift. I laughed in relief, and then my snorts were causing me to laugh even more. I hadn't killed her, so I decided, yes, she could have a lift to wherever she damn well pleased. My mind was frantically trying to process it all, so I overlooked the warning signs. I would have normally noticed them. She had no bags with her. She was staring at me intently, and I didn't hear her utter a word. "Geez, are you okay? You sure gave me a fright," that's what I told her. She didn't reply. Instead, she just smiled at me, this coy, half-there smile, as she looked from her raised thumb to the back of my car. I nodded at her. I think that's all I did for a solid minute. Then I mumbled something about needing to tidy my car first, and I scrambled into the back to gather up all my stuff. I had the door open for her as she passed me and climbed into the back. She smelled of vanilla. Vanilla hinted with iron. There was something intoxicating about her, but also bewildering. I couldn't help but stare at her as she sat in the middle of the back seat. Her hands were just folded on her lap. She looked about the same age as me. I found myself wondering, had she come out here all alone? I closed the door, noticing that she remained completely still as it slammed shut. When I returned to the front seat, I found my phone in the footwell, a dozen worried messages on it from Max. It buzzed in my hand. The Muppet Show theme song was filling the silence. It was my favorite show growing up. That's what I was flustered. I was feeling embarrassed. I better answer it, it's my boyfriend is probably freaking out. Might be best if you stay quiet. He has this whole thing about road safety, and that doesn't involve hitchhikers. But she didn't reply, so I looked in the rearview mirror and caught her giving me that same coy, half-there smile as she fiddled with her earring. Baby blue star. I was shaking. I hadn't even realized how badly. I managed to answer the phone and press it to my ear, and my thoughts were just trembling as I managed to speak. Max was freaking out that something bad had happened. I told him I thought I saw a deer in the road, but it was a false alarm. Then I reassured him I'd be with him soon. All the while, I looked at the woman in the rearview mirror. I saw my own reflection, and then I realized something that in my panic hadn't already dawned on me. Minus the blue-tinted hair, she looked a lot like me. She had the same oval face and olive skin tone as I did, the same dreamy look Max is always calling me out on. I waited for Max to end the call, and then I said to her, "You look a lot like..." It doesn't matter. I didn't want to freak her out any more than I already had. I'd already almost run her over, hadn't I? As I started driving, the radio turned on by itself. It was playing a gravelly voiced version of Unchained Melody. I never heard it before. My boyfriend and I had our first dance at prom to this song. Well, the original, I said without thinking. And then I muttered, "The original's better." She didn't say anything. She hadn't said anything. In the rearview mirror, I saw her staring into nowhere. I was noticing how there was no earring in her other ear. "But we'll be there soon," I said, automatically realizing that I hadn't even asked where she was going. "Where should I drop you off?" "We're passing through Hagerstown next. Is that okay?" She just tilted her head and then started fiddling with her earring, scratching at it until the music faded away. All I could hear was that sound, her clawing at her own skin. Something felt wrong. I could feel it. Then through my doubts, my phone rang, the Muppet Show theme song ringing in my ears. I didn't want to answer it right now, so I ignored it. When it finally stopped ringing, I looked in the rearview mirror at the woman. Only that young woman with that quiet demeanor had morphed into a bloody nightmare. She stared forward, and her bloodshot eyes were bulging out of their sockets. These shreds of skin hung off her face and her legs, revealing this gooey flesh, and clumps of it were visible in her knotted hair. Most disturbing of all, her arm dangled loose from its joint like a messed up marionette. I swerved to a stop, and I looked away. The fear multiplied inside of me as well as the panic. She had been fine just moments ago, quiet and startled perhaps, but unharmed. Now she was disfigured into something unfamiliar. Now she no longer looked like me. "Look, it's okay," I wheezed. I'll get you help." And I made myself turn to look at her, to again see that horror that was on my back seat. Only as I turned, I saw that she had gone, leaving no traces of blood or mangled flesh behind. There, in the middle spot where she'd been sitting, was just a crumpled pink sweater. I gasped in relief, panic, and just pure adrenaline. My heart was pumping so fast, I couldn't process this whole thing properly. I sobbed hysterically as I tried just to make sense of it all. I couldn't have imagined her. The sweater was real. I rubbed the itchy material beneath my fingers. It was real. And it had been hers. Not mine. It smelled of her, that sickly sweet vanilla, and a hint of iron. It proved that I wasn't going mad. But it also proved something that I couldn't comprehend. That a woman who looked similar to me could appear, alter grotesquely, and then vanish. I sat there gripping the steering wheel and looking in the back seat for minutes, or hours, I'm not sure which. The sky turned from that gray to ink black, so it must have been longer than I thought. My phone was ringing, but I ignored it until I couldn't anymore, and then I answered it. It was Max asking where I was. The concern was clear in his voice. I was about to blurt out the truth, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to panic him. Instead, I managed to compose myself enough to tell him that I had a migraine, and I was staying at my parents' house as it was closer. I felt bad for lying to him, but I preferred this to the alternative of him thinking I was crazy. I put the woman's sweater in the trunk beneath my raincoat, and then I drove. I was somehow managing to calm down enough to drive to my parents' house. Everything passed in the sleepless haze that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman, mangled and bloody. Her arm was hanging there, barely attached to her body with those fleshy threads. The next morning, I had almost convinced myself that I'd imagined it all. I pulled myself together enough to greet Max when he arrived. Even though he didn't say as much, I could tell he was annoyed about last night. I could see the madness glistening in his eyes. He didn't say anything. He wouldn't. Sensing it alone, that was enough to unsettle me. But I agreed to let him take me out for breakfast, and as sick as I felt, I thought eating something might help. And in the passenger seat, I stared out of that window. I didn't listen much to what he was saying. That woman's mangled body was replaying in my mind. Her bulging eyes and the fleshy sores on her face. And then a song on the radio made me twitch in my seat. I heard Max say, "Hey Molly, that's our song." Ugh, why have they butchered it? The same cover version of Unchained's melody filled that small space. The gravelly female voice seemed to itch on my skin. Something jabbed at my hand. I pulled it away, staring at something embedded in it. A small stud earring. Baby blue star. "Molly, are you okay?" Max looked at me. His eyes were unblinking and his smile was slipping as he saw me pull the earring out of my palm. "Oh, that must be Mom's. I gave her a lift to work the other day. Geez, she's always losing things." He forced a laugh. He held his hand out to take it from me. I nodded as I passed it to him, and I watched him place it in his pocket. I stared out of that window, and I tried to push out the thoughts that nagged there. He spoke to me, but words I did not hear, as that song seemed to contort in my mind. I looked at that small dot on my hand, where the earring had impaled it. I knew what this meant. My intuition confirmed when I looked at pictures of Max's mom and I saw what I already knew. Her ears weren't pierced. I managed to keep it together, then I left the next day and I returned to Philadelphia. I split up with Max a week later. Although he tried to change my mind, I would not let him, and I did not see him again. I wanted to go to the police, but how could I? All I had was a sweater and a theory. They would never believe me. Shit, I barely believed myself. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see that woman right there. That woman who looks so much like me. She switches from normal to mangled, like one of those flip books I had growing up. A story unfolding with no answers, only a warning. A warning meant for me. In 2007, Maxwell Stanton was arrested for the abduction of a young woman. Her identity remains protected, who hitchhiked a lift from him. She managed to get away by flagging down a passing vehicle, but she sustained substantial injuries. These included severed fingers and chunks of her skin removed. On hearing this, Molly Knightley was prompted to go to the police and hand in that sweater that she had kept in the trunk of her car for 5 years. Forensics showed that it belonged to a woman named Diane Morley. She'd been missing since 2003. Although this implicated Molly in that crime, there was not enough evidence to link either her or Maxwell to this disappearance. But he is now serving a lengthy jail sentence for his other crime. Molly believes that Max abducted Diane because she looked like her. And this meant he could carry out his twisted fantasies and frustrations on her while imagining it was Molly. She also believes that Diane appeared to her beyond the grave as a warning. There have been various reported accounts of hitchhikers vanishing from the back seats of vehicles and only leaving an item of clothing behind. It's one of the most well-known urban legends, but as always, well-known legends stem from somewhere. They stem from a web of past truths. Stories like Molly's remind us to trust our instincts, that feeling when something just isn't right, even when we can't explain why. It's always blown my mind a little bit that only about 30% of our viewers are actually subscribed to my channel. If you've been listening to these stories and they've become a part of your week, consider hitting subscribe and pressing that join button. It helps so much to keep the circle growing and to get you better content every week. And in the meantime, I'd love to hear your story. You ever have had a moment like Molly's? When your gut told you something was wrong, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? You share it right now in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and sometimes, these shared experiences, they help others recognize their own warning signs. And if this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes these tales find exactly the person who needs them most, but until next time, trust your instincts. They're usually trying to tell you something important. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.